This is something which is related to this philosophy which has penetrated in the developing world. What this philosophy is actually about, it describes a move towards a free market capitalism and delivers from the end diversion from the government ownership, like no more dependence on the government ownership. It basically refers to the policies which are associated with free trade, globalization, privatization, and changes in government spending to stimulate the private sector. Dr. Stephen has already emphasized a lot on giving a space to the private sector in Ghana. There are some characteristics which are particular about the neoliberalism, and in that the first one is the privatization. What privatization is that when a government sells state-owned entities and businesses to the private sector, these may include the banks, the transportation services, the utility companies, and health and educational institutes. What basically the purpose is to sell off these government-owned, I would say, assets and institutes to the private investors. The purpose is to achieve the efficiency. The purpose is basically to achieve the efficiency because what the issue is, because the private sector is usually thought of to be more efficient when running these businesses, because it has not to face the corruption or the corrupt people or the rent-seeking behavior, which we do find in very much prevalent in the developing countries when the same business is run by the government, has already been discussed a lot before my coming to this stage. Then the second important characteristic of the neoliberalism policies is the deregulation. What deregulation is, the deregulation basically entails reducing government regulation on economic activities, such as trade, or imposing taxes on certain businesses. What deregulation basically does, it allows companies to become more profitable and improve the overall quality of running business. Then the third important characteristic of the neoliberal policies is the free trade. This is how you know the neoliberalism, if the free trade is taking place. And how the free trade takes place, it is marked by globalization and greater openness towards investment and trade, and with total freedom on the movement of capital between different geographies. And here the economic growth is expected to occur along with the better and cheaper access to resources. So with this, I have discussed the concept of neoliberalism. And when countries are, I wouldn't say that are forced, but when they are voluntarily practicing these neoliberalism policies, the cost of doing business becomes so important for them. Because to implement the policy of deregulation, the policy of privatization, the policy of trade liberalization, and where the government expenditures are intended to be reduced, these all policies synchronize with the cost of doing business lesser, or easing the cost of doing business in developing countries. Now here I would compare the situation which is prevailing regarding the cost of doing business in developing countries with that of Ghana, so that you people, I can keep your interest alive in this discussion. So the first thing which I have found in the literature, that what Ghana has done over the years after getting its independence. Yesterday I paid visit to the Independence Square and I was so impressed. And I was remembering all those people who sacrificed their lives to make this great country. So what Ghana has done, it has made impressive economic growth like other developing countries, but where it has missed. This economic growth has not come up with development. And how do you people, because some youth I can see, how do you people recognize the development is taking place? It takes place when you see improvement in the human development indicators, like that life expectancy, like human development index, like mean years of schooling. and standard of living measured not in terms of per capita income, but in terms of the access to water, sanitation, and access to better healthcare facilities. So if you just look at the Ghana, you would see that it ranks at 138 out of 189 countries in HDI. The mean years of schooling are not parallel to the other parts of the world where you can see the similar growth pattern is taking place. So though the Ghana has made a phenomenal improvement in achieving a good growth, but what about the development indicators and what policies we need, especially on the business side, to improve these indicators? Because in this part of the world where we live, which we call the developing countries, we shouldn't talk about only increasing numbers, making phenomenal increase in the per capita income. The growth process should be inclusive. And when we talk about the inclusive growth process, it means it should include each and every one. And by each and every one, I mean it should include people from every segment of the society. So microeconomic businesses or small businesses should become the part of this growth process, which could have been missing somewhere in the growth strategy of the Ghana, and it should be looked upon now. It's the time to look upon that what went wrong. Then what is missing in this phenomenal growth? It was the diversification of the economy and the industrialization. If you look at the data of the cost of doing business for different countries, and especially the success stories which you find in Malaysia and Korea, you would see that how these countries have progressed from the lower middle income countries to the higher middle income country, and now they have joined the club of the higher income countries in the world. They have actually invested in diversifying their economy. By diversification, what I mean here, that they do not rely on the agrarian economy, they do not rely on the industrial economy, they have diversified it. Now their export share mostly comprises manufactured commodities, while if you just take the example of Ghana, the Ghana is still exporting coca, gold, and now I've got a good news that it's made good discoveries of oil, so it would be exporting oil to the rest of the world. But these are raw material, and from the basic principles of economics, let me tell you that when you export a raw material, it gives you a lower price. But if you export a manufactured product, a value added, which we call because you add some value to make a product, so it gives you a higher price. So you are selling your raw material to countries at the lower price. You are not at the favorable terms of trade. So what needs to be done here? Diversify your economy, increase the industrial base of your economy, and produce and export those goods where you can earn more. And that's not difficult at all. This can be done with the lessons learned from the rest of the world, especially like I gave you the example of the Korea and Malaysia, and more I will be talking about the reforms processes which I've taken in these countries. The next one which I've found here, that the structural differences, especially that